my name is Heather Briggs with My So Quilty Life, and today I'm super excited to show you something fun. You might have seen a couple of weeks ago that I posted a giant gingerbread on my Instagram and Facebook, and today I wanted to go over how I made that, how I did the calculations, and everything you need to make one yourself. This will be on my blog, so you can check that out at mysoquiltylife.com, and you can download all the content that I am going to be presenting in this tutorial. I thought I would show you really quickly the Ginger and Jolly giant ginger. It might be hard to see because my camera is not. Here we go. So here is the Ginger and Jolly giant ginger. What I did is I took one of my gingers from the pattern and I increased it by 3 times. And I made this very cute small throw. This is a big old ginger. It's giant, 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 giant. It's so giant that it really doesn't fit in my video screen, but I will add some pictures in the front of the video for you to be able to see it. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. I still have to add my borders on this. I haven't done that yet, but I plan to soon. I also haven't added my face and my mouth yet, and I hope to quilt this up soon, so I'll be sure to share that when I get it finished. So if you haven't done so already, go ahead and go to my blog at mysoquiltylife.com and go to the giant ginger blog post that I posted, and go ahead and download this free PDF that I've created for you. It's got great content for you, step-by-step instructions of what you need to do in order to increase your pieces that you need to make the giant ginger. I have had a couple of requests to make a giant ginger pattern, and unfortunately I just don't have time to do that right now, but I'll keep that in mind for the future. So instead, I created this document for you to be able to do one yourself. What you will need in order to make the giant ginger quilt is this PDF downloaded from the blog, as well as the new Ginger and Jolly pattern. The pattern will have everything you need in order to do your calculations for the cutting instructions and how many pieces you need, as well as the piecing instructions. This giant ginger PDF does not have any cutting instructions or piecing instructions. It is simply just a PDF showing you how to do the calculations and some diagrams and charts for you to be able to organize those so you don't get confused. This may feel complicated, but I promise it is super simple math, just some adding, subtracting, some multiplying, and I've made these easy to follow charts so you can follow along and get your correct measurements. There are 4 charts, and then I've also included in this PDF the template for the eyes and the mouth. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So we're gonna start with the first instructions, purchasing the Ginger and Jolly quilt pattern. This is quilt pattern 130. This can be found in my Etsy shop and on my online shop at mysoquiltylife.com. The next step you need to do is you need to look through the pattern after you have downloaded it or received it by mail and pick out which ginger you would like to do. There are 4 different types of gingers. Ginger 1 is on page 4, Ginger 2 is on page 5, Ginger 3 is on page 6, and Ginger 4 is on page 7. The ginger blocks are different. Some of them have different bows, they are arranged differently, but you can also mix and match. So on my giant ginger, I used the overalls and I changed the arms to the same fabric as the overalls, and I used the bow on the top of the head. So essentially I used ginger number 3 on page 6, his body, and I used ginger number 4's head. So you can also mix and match. You don't have to do exactly what it says here. But go ahead and pick which ginger you want to do, and we will move on to the part 1 chart. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and get started with part 1. So go ahead and flip to your part 1 chart. It's labeled up here as part 1 chart. Now, this has several different columns and several different things happening, but I want you to just follow along with me, and it's super simple. You will need a calculator and a pencil. A pencil is best just in case you need to erase something. So I have my pencil here and I have my calculator off to the side. We are going to be doing some simple math. I know this can be frustrating for some, but it's actually really simple and I'm excited to show you. Okay, let's go ahead and get started with step 1 of the part 1 chart. So what we need to do is we need to open up our pattern to the block that we want to use. Under that block, there is a diagram showing the pieces needed for that block. There are cutting instructions. It also shows letters and how many are needed for that block. So we're going to go ahead and open up our patterns. Now, I'm not going to actually be using the measurements from the pattern because that's something you have to purchase. So I've made up a couple of measurements that I think are kind of generic to show you for this example. So step 1 is using the pieces needed for the block under the ginger block in the ginger and jolly pattern. Fill out the fabric letters column in the chart. Here's the fabric letter column, and you're going to use the chart underneath the block that you are using in order to do this. So I'm just going to act like there is A, B, C, and D. I've made enough space for you to hopefully have enough for each block, but if you have to add some at the bottom or print off another chart, that'll work too. So we're going to go ahead in step 1 and just fill out your fabric letters. Now, in the pattern, you will have ginger jolly arms and separate leg units that you will need to account for too. So on page 3, you will be able to find those. And you can either add them in alphabetical order or add those units or add those pieces at the end. You'll see what I'm talking about when you crack open the pattern. Step 2, we're going to fill out the cutting instructions, the length and the width from the pattern in the current cutting instructions column in the chart. So I am going to pretend like my fabric A piece is a 2-inch by 3-inch rectangle. So you simply just write 2 inches and 3 inches. Okay? I'm going to pretend that my fabric B is a 4-inch by 4-inch square. I'm going to pretend that my fabric C is a 1 by 2-inch rectangle. And my fabric D is 5 inches by 10 inches. So you can see I have some rectangles and some squares. So this works for both. So in step 3, we are going to be subtracting a 1/2 inch from each the length and the width. So let me show you what I mean. This is going to get us the current finished measurements. So I have a 2 here. And if I subtract a 1/2 inch from 2, that is 1.5 inches. If I subtract a 1/2 inch from 3, that is 2.5 inches. And again, if I subtract a 1/2 inch by 4, that is 3.5. Again, 3.5 since it's a square. Again, subtracting 0.5 by 1, that is 0.5. 0.5 by 2, that is 1.5. So you can see how this is easy math right now. We're just subtracting a 1/2 inch from each length and width. So this is 4.5 and this is 9.5. So you're going to continue to do that all the way down your chart for all of your letters. And then we're going to move on to part 2 chart. Okay, so for part 2 chart, we are just going to be taking our fabric letters that we have here and our current finished measurements. These current finished measurements mean when your quilt, the Ginger and Jolly quilt, this quilt is sewed together. These pieces are the actual finished measure pieces in the quilt. We need to do that so then we can multiply it to find the cutting instructions for the giant jolly. So what we're going to do is we're going to take part 1 chart and set it to the side. Close enough. We need to be able to see it. And we are going to just go ahead and write our fabric letters. So A, B, C, and D. And then you're gonna write your current finished measurements under the current finished measurements column. So I've got a 1.5, I've got a 2.5, I've got a 3.5, 3.5, 0.5 inches, 1.5 inches, 4.5, and 9.5. Now, you may have to do this calculations twice to make sure that you get exactly what it's supposed to be. I would hate for you to not have something right, and then after you've cut out all your fabric, you're pulling out your hair, noticing that you had a measurement wrong. So go ahead and just do your calculations twice and just make sure, just double check yourself. I've done that a time or two and it is not fun. Okay, so step 2, now we're going to multiply our current finished measurements, the length and the width, by 3. I'm multiplying it by 3 because I'm multiplying this one ginger block by 300%. So what we are going to do is, using our calculators, unless you can totally do this in your brain, more power to you. I'm going to use a calculator. So we're going to do the first one, 1.5 times 3. So 1.5 times 3 gives me 4.5. Go ahead and put that in the new finished measurements column. Again, 2.5 by 3. That is 7.5. 3.5 times 3. 3 equals 10.5. And because that's a square, I know that that is the same. So go ahead and finish your chart with your measurements, and then we're going to go ahead on to part 3. Okay, now we can set our part 1 chart just off to the side. We no longer need it. We'll set our part 2 chart right here next to our part 3 chart. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your fabric letter from part 2 and your new finished measurements from part 2 and put them in these columns in the part 3 chart. So I have A, B, C, D. My new finished measurements are 4.5, 7.5, 10.5 by 10.5, 1.5 by 4.5, 13.5 by 28.5. Okay, so we have our new finished measurements. So when the giant ginger block is sewed together in the quilt top, if you measured each of those pieces, these are the new finished sizes. What we're going to do with these new finished sizes, because we have to be able to cut those, right? We have to know what we need to cut for the block. We're going to be adding our seam allowance. So adding 0.5 to the length and the width. So if you think about it, 1/4 of an inch on each side is 0.5. So what we're going to do is add each of these length and width by 0.5. So to get our new cutting instructions, this is the easy part. All the adding and subtracting is easy. So 4.5 plus 0.5 is 5. 7.5 plus 0.5 is 8. 10.5 plus 0.5 is 11, so 11. 1.5 plus 0.5 is 2, and 4.5 plus 5. 4.5 plus 0.5 equals 5. And so on. So you understand. So that's the easy part. Okay, so now we're going to be moving on. We can now set part 2 chart just out of the way. We no longer need that. We can set our part 3 chart next to our part 4 chart. Now we're almost done. So we have everything we need now, but what I wanted to do is organize it better so when you are cutting it, you can do it properly. So for the part 4 chart, again, always filling out our letter. We want to make these consistent through the entire process. And go ahead and skip number of fabric pieces. Go to the new cutting instructions. So essentially you're taking what you put here and putting it here. So 5 and 8, 11, 11, 2, 5, 14, 29. So now we have our new cutting instructions. What you're going to do for step 2 is you're going to go back through the pattern, and for A, write down how many pieces. That is in the pieces needed for the block diagram under each block in the main pattern. So in this pattern, you'll be able to find that. So I'm just going to make up a number. I need 2, I need 3, I need 2, and I need 1. So I just made that up. Another thing that will be helpful is when looking at this, you don't know what's background fabric, what's brown fabric, what's red fabric, etc. So it might be easier for you to go down the list and start writing, okay, A is background, and then D is red fabric, just so you can keep that organized when you are cutting. Okay, after you have finished filling out everything you need for the new cutting instructions, you can go ahead and move on to the block construction and finishing. So step 1, you're just going to be using your new finishing cutting instructions and the piecing instructions in the Ginger and Jolly pattern under the ginger block that you decided to make. And you're going to go ahead and make that ginger block. For step 2, you're going to cut 5 4.5 inch by width of fabric strips for the border. You're going to sew those together and then subcut them into 2 4.5 inch by 55 1/4 inch, and 2 4.5 by 49 inch. You're going to assemble those to the block as you would for any other border. Don't forget to share your progress as you're making this. The hashtag is Giant Ginger and Jolly Quilt on social media. You can also tag me at My So Quilty Life. I love seeing what you're making and I love to share it. And you can also hashtag Ginger and Jolly Quilt so everybody can see what you're making. If you found this tutorial helpful, please give it a like, a comment, and share the video. Also subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. That will really help me out a lot. So I hope you enjoyed this. Check out more of my videos on my YouTube channel, and I will see you later. Bye guys.